As a leader, I have had the opportunity to lead very diverse teams. I have led people from a few different generations. When you hear someone talk about the millennials or the Gen Z generations, how do I lead millennials or how do I lead Gen Zers? That has been a majority of the people who I've had on my team. When you're discussing generations and people who grew up at a certain time, I think there's this kind of proclivity that we have to refer to everyone who is younger than us as millennials. Technically, anyone born from 1981 to 1996 is a millennial. It's very easy to be negative toward millennials until you realize that you are one, and then you probably think they're not that bad. Most leaders are dealing with a team at least partially comprised of millennials, maybe mostly comprised of millennials. I've had teams made up of Gen Xers, millennials, Gen Zers at the same time. I've had teams made up of just millennials. I've had teams made up of primarily Gen Zers. I think that every generation looks at the next generation as being lazier than they are, maybe more narcissistic, not as hardworking. I think that's something that's just going to happen. The baby boomers, so anyone born from 1946 to 1964 is considered a baby boomer. The baby boomers are also called the me generation. They were termed as extremely narcissistic and only cared about themselves, very self-centered. Baby boomers now pretty much have that exact same perspective about millennials and Gen Zers. Well, they're narcissistic. They only care about themselves. They care about their image and their Instagram more than other people. So millennials were raised by baby boomers and partially Gen Xers, and Gen Zers were going to be raised by Gen Xers and millennials. My kids are in Generation Alpha. I assume that the millennials and the Zoomers are going to look at Generation Alpha and say, boy, they are completely lazy. The millennials and Gen Zers will look at the generations before them as being uptight, overly strict, set in their ways. Baby boomers, Gen Xers will look at the millennials and the Gen Zers as being lazy and coddled. Any stereotypes you get are rooted in some sort of truth. That doesn't mean that everyone meets those stereotypes. Millennials and Gen Zers have been some of the most hardworking people I've ever had work for me. Some of them have been the most driven individuals I've ever had the pleasure of working with, and I've seen them overcome obstacles. I've watched younger millennials and Gen Zers push themselves to accomplish things that their parents and their parents' parents did not accomplish, because they are uniquely positioned to be able to be the first in their family to do this thing. They are pushing themselves to get a college degree, get a master's degree, get a PhD, obtain certifications, because they want to be the first in their family to have done this. They are extremely hard workers. They are pushing themselves. They are overcoming obstacles, and they are proving to themselves, but also to everyone around them, that just because they're a millennial or Gen Zer doesn't mean they're not a hard worker. They're a harder worker because they are not letting the past define them. They're very aware of what their parents did. I think more and more Gen Zers are not going to go to college to get a degree if they don't feel they need that degree. They might get an associate's, or maybe we'll even start to see a bit more of a resurgence in some of the technical trades that have been downplayed for the millennials. When I was graduating high school and getting ready to go into college, it was an expectation that every single person in my high school class would go to college. And those who were not going to college right away, or who didn't get a scholarship, I think they were looked down on a little bit. I have worked with many people who don't have college degrees, and they are still very successful. I have pushed organizations to hire people without a college degree. This position requires someone with at least a bachelor's degree, and I have hired people who don't have a bachelor's degree because they are hard workers. Many times I've hired someone in and they're still working on their degree. I'm very thankful I have a degree, but I didn't have to get my degree to know what I was passionate about. I have encouraged many people to, if you don't know what you want to study, if you don't know what you want to be an expert in, then you don't necessarily have to go to school right away, or go and take some general education classes, and you might find that you are interested in something like psychology just because you took a psychology 100 level college course, and all of a sudden this is interesting.